Welcome to an overview of supply and demand essentials, where we'll unpack three core ideas that drive markets. The basic laws of supply and demand, how prices and quantities reach equilibrium, and why elasticity and curve shifts matter when markets change. The central diagram shows price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal, illustrating how these forces interact to determine outcomes in real markets. At the heart of market models are simple behavioral assumptions. Individuals pursue self-interest, firms seek profit, and choices are constrained by scarcity, information, and income. The slide visualizes how incentives shape behavior and, in turn, produce predictable reactions to price changes, which economists use as the backbone for modeling how markets respond when conditions change. The law of demand tells us there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. As price rises, quantity demanded falls. The downward sloping demand curve captures this and reflects two mechanisms: declining marginal utility, where each extra unit gives less satisfaction, and the substitution effect, where consumers switch to relatively cheaper alternatives as prices change. It's important to distinguish a movement along the demand curve from a shift of the entire curve. A movement is caused by a change in the good's own price and alters quantity demanded, useful for short-term sales forecasting. A shift reflects changes in income, tastes, or related prices and signals a change in overall demand, which matters for long-term planning and policy evaluation. Producers generally respond to higher prices by supplying more, which creates the upward-sloping supply curve. This happens because higher prices raise marginal revenue and encourage output. But expanding production faces rising marginal costs due to diminishing returns. Together, these forces explain why supply increases with price and how producer incentives anchor market supply behavior. Supply curves shift when factors beyond price change, including input costs like labor and materials, technological improvements that boost efficiency, taxes or subsidies, and the number of sellers in the market. The diagram links each determinant to a potential shift and highlights how managers, investors, and policymakers can use this insight to anticipate cost shocks, guide sector strategy, and predict regulatory impacts. Market equilibrium is where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, producing the market clearing price with no persistent surplus or shortage. The intersection point balances buyer willingness to pay with seller willingness to sell, and when shifts occur, they create temporary surpluses or shortages that put pressure on price until voluntary exchange restores balance through spontaneous adjustments. To analyze market changes, economists shift one curve and compare the old versus new equilibrium to predict directionally how price and quantity will move. This visual tool supports scenario planning for external shocks, structured policy evaluation to estimate intervention impacts, and investment forecasting that anticipates potential shifts, helping decision-makers prepare for a range of future market outcomes. Bringing theory to practice, markets use price formation, resource allocation, and quantity adjustments to coordinate activity in real economies. Prices emerge from the interaction of supply and demand. Scarce resources get distributed across competing uses, and output levels change in response to signals, equipping analysts to interpret events, critique policy choices, and anticipate strategic responses by consumers, firms, and governments.